is for you. And we're going to learn that a bit more. Okay, so we're going to just, kind of having a different perspective around leadership. What does it require for young leaders of today? Or as a person, what does leadership call for? And things like that. So I hope we can, I hope you have put your expectations or your insights, like what do you want to gain from here? How do you want your thinking to be disrupted from today's session on leadership? Okay, so now without further ado, I would like to now take this opportunity to introduce our wonderful, great people, our facilitators of the day that are going to be taking us through this session on leadership. And we are going to start with Daniel Rono, Mr. Daniel Rono, all the way from Kenya. So he's going to tell us, you've seen his bio, but he is doing amazing things. I met him from Kericho, and he's all the way from Kericho to this platform, and he's going to take us through leadership, sharing his journey. So Daniel, welcome. Please let us give a virtual round of applause as he comes and takes us through the first part of the session. And then we'll introduce another speaker, another facilitator after he's done. But let's, give a round of applause for Daniel. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you, Felicia. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are listening in. It's a pleasure. My name is Daniel, as Felicia has mentioned, from a green town called Kericho. It rains quite a lot. Yeah, today I'm going to talk about leadership, and it's an exciting topic. It's not something big as it's something big, of course, because it influences a lot of things, but also it's not something difficult as perceived by most young people. So I'm going to share my slides, share my insights, and give a bit of my story as we progress. So we'll begin by defining or trying to find out what is leadership. And I hope that by the end of my session that you'll be able to realize as a young leader that you can be a leader of integrity, and you can take up your position. And then also, I believe by the end of this session, you'll know that leadership is not about titles. You don't need great titles for you to take up leadership responsibilities, and also how you could lead in your own sphere. And leadership is not just taking up big roles alone, or maybe being a managing director or the president or a prime minister, but there are people who don't have titles and have made a great impact in their communities. So moving on, one of the outcomes of my session today is that you'll be able to perceive leadership in a different way. And I hope to provide some insights on how you could develop your leadership qualities. So what is leadership? A point of reflection. As a young person, I want you to think about a leader who is living or somebody who's in the past. And you could write on the chat box, what were some of the qualities of this leader that made you like this leader, or that inspired you as a young person? That person could be alive today, or probably a great leader of all time of the past, but made a difference. So maybe I'll allow 30 seconds for quick comments on the chat box, and then I'll ask Felicia probably to check for me the comments.
So maybe you can keep repeating, sorry, Danny, if you can just keep repeating the task, and then,
okay,
because some are still joining in, yes.
Okay. I want you to think about a person that you rate to be an excellent leader, or somebody who inspired you, somebody who is living today, or somebody probably might not be alive, but you know that they made an impact in history and probably in your life. So just mention, and then who is that leader, and what were the qualities that they have or they do have at the moment?
So we have Kwame Nkrumah. Someone said that.
Oh, Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So please just don't just mention the name, if you can also list the qualities as to why you think they're great leaders or they're good leaders to you. Okay, someone says leadership, I think leader who shows the correct way and goes that way. So in Kenya, we have Professor, I think, Wangari Maathai. That's Kiprono. Someone else said because they are fair.
Okay. Moving on, I appreciate those responses. Yeah. Somebody mentioned Wangari Maathai, and that's part of the people that I've shown in my slide. In this slide, it's the world best and worst leaders. So beginning with, we have Wangari Maathai. She won a Nobel Peace Prize for environmental conservation and protection in Kenya, and she really fought hard the regime that was there that wanted to grab all the lands. On the extreme high end, we have somebody by the name Hitler. Probably we have heard from history. Hitler was, I would call him one of the worst leaders. Because of him, 6 million Jews were murdered, and there was a lot of chaos in Germany. On the extreme right, on the right, we have, somebody can mention, who's that?
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King, excellent. We know about the civil rights movement and the freedom that the Black people in America are able to experience because of the civil rights movement that he led. We also have Nelson Mandela. We know about South Africa, and he fought, first of all, he was imprisoned for 27 years, and he was able to forgive, which is a very big thing, and at the same time, try to reconcile both the white and blacks in South Africa. So the question, what about you? Do you think you're a leader? That hand points to you to think about that. Are you a leader? And to answer that, I will go to the next slide and tell you basically what leadership is and how you can discover that you're a leader. Leadership is influence, as mentioned by John Maxwell and quite a number of other leaders. It's the ability to impact the behaviors, the attitudes, the opinions, and the choices of others. And I would say this can be positively or negatively, because we have known of leaders who were able to destroy many lives, but we've seen also leaders who have made that change in the world because of their influence. I want to mention also, leadership is your ability to influence an organization or members of an organization towards a common goal, a common objective. And lastly, leadership is about service. If you can serve, if you can help people achieve their goals, then you're a leader. John Maxwell states that a leader is a person who knows the way, shows the way, knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Just reflect on that. Somebody who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. I would just mention, like, even in our forum, I would call Felicia as a great leader because she's passionate about human capital, especially towards young people. She's showing the way by leading these conversations, both last week and this week, in her own right. And basically, as a leader, that's it, serving, helping other people, showing the way, going the way, and knowing the way. So talking about the qualities of a good leader, we know very well of the leaders that we have mentioned. Somebody mentioned Kwame Nkrumah, Professor Wangari Maathai. There are some common characteristics about these leaders that enable, or that the reason why we view them as leaders is because of some of the qualities that they do have. So probably you could throw in, what are some of the qualities of a good leader? Maybe 10 seconds.
So just to add, I think someone also said the late John Pombe Magufuli, he was a hardworking and transparent leader. So those are just some of the additional qualities that being contributed. Yeah, solution-oriented from Margaret Alfred. Okay. So also Alimami Bangura also, as he was expounding on Kwame Nkrumah, yeah, shed some light on his leadership as someone who did not only work to fulfill his responsibility as a president, but worked to ensure that everything that needed to be done to make Ghana a free, independent country was fulfilled. But also he touched on someone who had strong values. Also others about, being of service to others, as, servant leadership. Juma says listening to people. Perpetual says a leader is courageous and knows when to take risks.
Wow, thank you for your contributions. I appreciate the comment from Kwame Nkrumah as a Pan-Africanist. He was a great leader indeed. And just as you've all mentioned, leadership about strong values, about service, about direction, and I've put up this. Number one is about inspiring and directing action. Somebody who can inspire and direct action is a leader. Also motivates. If you think about human behavior, human beings need, we all need a goal. We need also to be motivated. So a good leader is a person who inspires people to move towards a goal. It guides and empowers, just like Kwame Nkrumah was able to lead his nation towards financial independence. Somebody who's visionary, who sees ahead, who sees maybe 5, 10, 20 years. There are quite a number of stories of people even who wrote a 100-year strategic plan for their families, and their grandchildren are using the same strategic plan to date. And in the lineage of their families, there are quite a number of successful people who have emerged because their forefathers had a strategic plan. So somebody who is also authentic. We know also, and I probably from those who come from different African countries, we know quite a number of leaders in the African continent. Some of them are not authentic. They have their own selfish interests, motives, but a true leader is an authentic leader, the one who goes the way, shows the way, the one who is visionary, the one who leads by example. Somebody also is a risk taker, because in leadership, you have to take risks. Sometimes it's a lonely journey because people might misunderstand you, might not understand why you are taking them to a particular direction. But the ability to take risks, taking initiative, and a good leader is also an effective communicator. And one of us also mentioned about listening. That's a hallmark of leadership, the ability to listen keenly, to listen to the ideas. And once you listen to the ideas, this will enable you to enrich your ideas, refine your ideas, and make a better, probably improve on your goals. A good example in Kenya, before the implementation of quite a number of local projects, we have what we call public participation. The idea behind it is quite good because it's about developing projects that involve the community and that the community appreciate. So that's one way that leadership can tap on feedback from the people in the grassroots. And also as a young person, listening to your people, actually, it's interesting that people like talking about themselves so much, so that when you listen to them, people, by the end of the conversation, somebody would say, that was a good conversation. And probably you only listened and asked some questions. The other thing is about collaboration. Without collaboration, we can't have effective leadership. And we know even in this platform that we are quite a number of us from different countries collaborating, and we're able to to share this information that we have. So moving on, having known about the qualities of our leaders, of a good leader, this is not exhaustive. We could come up with a big number of lists, but these are just a few things. Concept of leadership. Because by the end of this short presentation, we want to know, how can I be a better leader? How can I enhance my leadership qualities? And there are some critical concepts of leadership that we need to do. I'm linking this with those who were able to attend last week's session. We talked about self-awareness. So in the concept of leadership, there are three things. Number one, awareness. Number two is ability. And number three is commitment. And just to run through is awareness is, you need to be aware of who you are, how your behavior impacts others, aware of your environment, your actions. So this is about reflecting, knowing yourself. How does my behavior influence others? How do my attitudes impact other people who are around me? So that's one of the concepts of leadership that we all need to be aware as young people. The other thing is, yes, you could be self-aware. What about your abilities? So the other concept is about ability. The ability to function, the ability to communicate as a leader also, the ability to resolve conflicts, the ability to make decisions, the ability to build strong teams and collaborate with others. There's a quote by John Barrow who says that if you never try, you'll never know what you're capable of. And this in this journey of leadership, it's about stepping out of your comfort zone, taking up small steps, trying something that you've never done before, meeting people that you've never met. Felicia, when we met in Kenya, I remember it was just a random meeting with one of our friends. And now quite a number of years back, we still communicate, we still participate in leadership because we were able to step out of our comfort zones. The other thing is about commitment. Strive Masiwa says that a vision in its own is not enough. Hard work, dedication is required to make the vision a reality. So as a young person, one of the greatest concepts of leadership is about commitment, being able to start and finish what you start, being able to overcome obstacles, because without that commitment, without finishing what you start, you cannot demonstrate good leadership. Part of the core foundations of leadership that we need to know as young people, and I would mention two that are critical in leadership. Number one is self-worth. Who are you as a young person? How do you feel about yourself? Do you believe in yourself? Do you know your strengths? Do you know your weaknesses? Do you know who you are apart from just your name, maybe from your place of birth? What is your history? What are your passions? So self-worth is a critical core foundation in leadership. The other thing is about self-confidence, and self-confidence comes from a track record. Do you finish what you start as a young person? For example, if you set yourself a goal, probably I want to study or I want to start a business venture, are you able to finish? Have you earned some successes in the past? Do you trust your own skills and ability to learn? So these are critical things as a young person that if you want to develop your leadership, you need to know who you are, your self-worth. And the other thing is self-confidence. About the challenges of leadership that we face, maybe quick comments. What are some of the challenges that you face in your country, in your school, in your place of work when it comes to leadership? You can throw in a comment there. What are the leadership challenges that you face in your country, your school, your sphere of work? Any feedback?
We have someone saying management. So please, if we can also elaborate a little bit, maybe like a statement or something, not just one word, so that we can understand what you mean when you say management. What is it? What is it about management? Okay, Perpetual says lack of participation of followers.
Mm-hmm.
Ali says people management.
Mm-hmm.
Juma says corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Sami says opposition of raised proposals and plans from followers.
Mm-hmm.
Geraldine says being looked down on due to age or gender, age and gender.
Okay.
Juma says to work with lazy people.
Lazy people, okay. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for your contributions. And actually what you're saying are valid challenges that affect leadership. And it's true. Probably being looked down upon. We know about the issues of gender, probably in the African context to some extent. I'm not saying in all, probably the women are looked down upon when it comes to leadership. There's the issue of corruption, which is a huge thing. I'll mention a few just to complement what you've said. There's the issue of people management. Managing people is not easy. So I'm not saying it's, we need to take up leadership as young people, but it's good to be prepared and know that it's not an easy task. So we have glorification of unethical leaders. Probably in the African setting, people like celebrate unethical leaders, leaders who are truant. There is greed for power and money, lack of integrity, corruption, as you've said. People disinterest in participation, especially young people. Young people many times have apathy. They don't want to participate in leadership. So as a young person, why should you take up leadership? And since my time is really running out, I'll just mention a few things. I like a quote by one of, when I participated in the Emerging Leaders Foundation as a fellow, one of the common quotes that we had was that if you're not in the table of the discussion, then you are in the menu. So as a young person, when you fail to participate in leadership, when you fail to take up a leadership position, then you are the menu. So, and I don't think it's something good because you'll be taken advantage of. People will take advantage of the opportunities are there. There's a statement that young people are the leaders of tomorrow. And this comes up because young people are not taking up initiative and opportunities today. So as a young person, kindly know that if you're not in the table of discussion, you are the menu. Again, leadership provides opportunities for self-discovery and to develop yourself. Moving on, and as I wind up, I want to give a small story about how some few leadership things that I were able to take up, just small ones. Back in Kericho, I'm passionate about music, and I wanted to have a band, and I wanted to have a sort of a large group of people whom would have music together. So one time, randomly, together with my friend, we met in a hotel having tea. And coincidentally, we met two strangers, started a conversation. Within 30 minutes, all of us, four of us realized that we were passionate about music. And I had a diary, and we agreed to form a group with the random strangers. We even set the number of practice sessions and the unexpected number of people that would want. And even around 5 months later, on that same date, we set even the exact date that we would want to have our performance. And guess what? Everything happened exactly as we had planned with random strangers. We ended up having a band of almost 50 to 60 people, coordinating practices. It was hectic, but from that, there are quite a number of relationships that have been birthed. We were able to have almost 5 or 6 concerts in 6 years consecutively. And all that came up by taking up leadership opportunities. Secondly, I would want to mention my participation with our local county assemblies, with our politicians here. I'm not a politician. I'm not aspiring to be a politician, but I work with the politicians. And I took up a leadership opportunity to interact with my local leaders, just to know what they do, And as a result, I've been able to form personal relationships with them, able to know what goes on in my county in terms of leadership. And I've been able to contribute even to a bill in our county assembly that is still being worked on about youth empowerment. So those are some of the things that came up because I took up the opportunity. And finally, there's a quote by my coach, Dr. James Richards, because one of the questions is, how do I develop my leadership skills? He says this: if you don't have a good track record, start building one. Keep your commitments. Let your word mean something. Show up on time for appointments. Before you agree to do anything, think it through to make sure you have counted the cost. Then follow it through to the end of your responsibilities. Give up all justifications and blame shifting for the past failures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. That was a wonderful presentation, and I think I love the story at the end of how you were able to. That was very practical, and I think one of the things that I picked out from there is that leadership is about taking action, and I think also it's about finding or getting the right people to really move with. So that was great, and now I will, I will just hold on there. And if we have any questions from Danny's session, please let's have the questions flowing on the chat, and then we'll get back to them during our discussion. So I hope you've gotten a bit of an introduction and understanding, just basic understanding of what leadership is, what are the qualities, what does it take, and some of the examples, good examples from leadership that we can take. So now I would like to introduce our next speaker, next facilitator, Charles Washoma, Mr. Charles Washoma. He'll tell us a bit about himself as well. So Charles, he is my mentor, and he's had great accomplishments. I think you've seen his bio, and it's a great honor to have him leading us through this session. He has a lot to share. This time will not be enough for him, but I hope we can get the most out of it. He's going to be touching on integrity. So how we can be leaders of integrity and why is it so important? So Charles, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here with you today and pursuing Mimi Nani's objective of unleashing the stars of Africa. So welcome to all of you that have taken time to participate with us today. It's good to have you all on board. As Felicia said, I'll be speaking about integrity as a foundation of leadership, for leadership. And I have to say, thank you so much, Daniel, for a thought-provoking presentation. And it's a really great segue into discussion around integrity as a foundation on the core of leadership, which Daniel has spoken about quite a bit. So thanks again for that. And yeah, I think it's as someone who's increasingly getting more and more gray hair, it's nice to be able to share some experiences with young people that have so much potential to impact our continent, to impact the future, and to do so for good, for the good. And the reason why I'm committed to do this is because I myself had the privilege of people investing in me and taking time to mentor me, to guide me, and to help me to realize the potential which I possess. So really, it's an honor and a privilege when you have the opportunity to guide and mentor and to coach other people. So I urge you that even as you learn, you also transmit what you're learning to others. It's a privilege and an honor, and so much can be achieved as a result. So we're going to talk about integrity, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit or reflect on leadership that Daniel spoke so well about. So what typically comes to mind for you when you hear the words leader and leadership? I think Daniel spoke really well on people that we can reflect on, both good and bad. And maybe a reflection on whether there's congruence between what you understand and expect of a leader or leadership and what you see out there as the reality. Is there a mismatch? Is there a huge gap between what we believe leadership should be and what we typically see around us, whether it's in community leadership, whether it's within our workplaces, within our schools, within our churches or our mosques, or wherever it is that there is opportunity for leadership, even in our homes and in our families. And what do you think motivates people to become leaders? Some people actively pursue leadership positions. Some people are thrown into them, but those that consciously pursue the initiative of leading, what do you think motivates them? Is it the idea of helping those that are in need? Is it the idea of feeling important and having power over others? Is it the idea of accumulating wealth? What is it that motivates people? Do you see yourself as a leader? I think this is in line with one of the questions that Daniel had asked. Well, how do you see yourself in this whole idea of leadership? And what are some of the situations where you have acted or played the role of a leader? Is it as an older brother or older sister to your siblings? Is it as a prefect at school? Is it as a counselor within your student representative body at university? Is it as a team leader within your workplace? And how do you think you've done, or how do you think you're doing in this role as a leader? As Felicia said, please feel free to chat in the chat area, and we will, of course, engage. We will, at different intervals, engage with some of your comments and some of your thoughts. We would love to hear from you. And when we look at integrity and leadership, what are some of the common understandings that we can establish on what it means to have integrity or what it means to be a leader? Of course, integrity means the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles and values. I see my screen is starting to have some interesting shapes take place. I'm not sure exactly what's happening there, but yeah, I hope this resolves itself because I've not actually touched the screen. But bear with me.
Think
yes.
Someone must have done that. So let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Just
okay.
carry on and.
Yeah, so maybe any co-hosts, just be careful with any triggers that you might be pulling at this juncture. All right, so the importance of having honesty, good intentions, strong moral principles and values is integral. And the idea of being whole and undivided. The importance of this is we talk about not being double-minded or having double standards. And even when we look at a structure like a bridge, for example, we say, does it have integrity? Especially engineers want to know, does it have integrity? Can you carry a load across the bridge without it collapsing? Do the person's moral values and principles, the basis on which we make decisions, are they strong enough to carry them through the different circumstances through which they must lead? In good times, when there's plenty of wealth that could be stolen or that could be used for good. In difficult times, when people could be tempted to compromise, do these values stand strong? And what about leading? Well, the idea of causing others to go with you while you're moving forward. So the idea of making progress and developing versus being regressive or moving backwards in a counterproductive manner. Also being a route or a means through which others can develop and reach a particular place or direction. And we talked about mentorship. We talked about what it means to lead others in a constructive way, in a way that has good intention and a good end to it. So leading people to a better place, the place of that vision Daniel spoke about vision and did that well. So taking initiative in action, even for you, if you see an old lady trying to cross the road and you take the initiative of helping her cross, that is leadership. If you take the initiative of fixing something that is broken in the community or in the family, that of course is leadership, and it sets a great example for others. Leadership can also be a position of advantage. If you're in a contest or a race, for example, you're in the first place in the leadership position. This also can have negative connotations. For example, if someone wants to abuse their leadership by taking advantage, or it can be positive by taking opportunity, for example. And let's look at what we could.
Sorry,
Hello.
Charles. I
Yes.
wonder if maybe you can stop sharing and reshare again. I don't know if we can resolve this.
Yes, let's do that and see if we have success. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so that's a lot better there. All right, now let's look at what we could term the architecture or infrastructure of integrity. Remember, we said integrity is about being whole and undivided. So let's look at the structure. Obviously, a structure must have a foundation. A foundation is the lowest load-bearing level of any structure. And foundations are typically not seen. For example, a foundation would be underground. Now, the values are not something that are typically visible within themselves. However, we do see the product of these values as a consequence of the actions we take because they inform our behaviors, right? And then a structure typically has pillars. Pillars are fundamental and they're precept to any structure standing upright. So important pillars on top of the values that we have. When we talk about values, for example, we talk about purpose, we talk about honesty, we talk about love as a core motivation, service, discipline, and I'm sure you can think of many other core foundational values that inform your life. So with pillars, the key areas in our life which inform our wholeness and being undivided and well put together would be our well-being. For example, our health and fitness, our spiritual life, informed by our faith, learning and development, continuously developing. The mere fact that we're here today shows that we have this intention of continuing to grow, continuing to learn, informally and formally, of course. We must have an education within our lives. Family and social, basically relationships. No man is an island. I'm sure we've all heard this said. Relationships are fundamental. Career. Everyone must have some form of work or means of through which they become productive. Are you a tutor at school? Are you a fitter and turner? Are you a plumber? Are you an accountant? What is it that you do as a livelihood? So you can see how a lot of these come together. And essentially, when you look at someone's life and these kind of areas, are they taking care of themselves and their well-being physically, spiritually? Are they learning? Are they growing? Are they being productive in pursuing a livelihood and a career? You see a clear path to purpose. When we talk about purpose, what exactly are we talking about? We're talking about the reason for which something exists or for which it is created. And it's very important for us as private individuals and as leaders to be clear on what it is we believe our core purpose in life is. I think we're all aware that when an object or anything is used for a reason other than its core purpose, it can create a lot of problems. For example, a bread knife could be used to prepare lunch and food for your family, which is wholesome for the body and the wellness of the body. You minister to your friends and family by serving them wonderful food. But if you take that knife and you use it to take someone's life, you're using it for a purpose for which it is not intended, and you therefore cause harm. So we must be clear on what it is we believe our purpose in life is, or the purpose for which we pursue activities such as leadership. And ultimately, we're pursuing a life vision, becoming and the impact we seek to have. Why becoming? So for example, from my own personal faith and spiritual walk, a core foundation of my faith is to continuously become and reflect more of the character of Christ. So that's our growing and learning. Even as we're here today, we're growing and learning. And of course, it's about the impact we want to have in the world. Daniel spoke about contributing to some legislation, I think some policies and a bill that was being passed within his constituency and his environment. Now, this is important because often people can look at leadership from a perspective of what they want for themselves. Okay, I want to become the manager. I want to become the director. I want to be president. Okay, that's what you want for yourself, but you're not telling us anything about the people that you serve or that you're supposed to serve. I want all children to have access to schooling facilities. I want all families to have access to good health and employment and livelihood so that they can take care of their families and be included, in the financial systems, that financial inclusion for wealth creation in the community. This is the sort of language we want to hear from leaders. And Daniel pointed out this issue about leadership is not just about titles. It's important because we lead in so many ways. You've got a young brother, a young sister, and you lead them when you show them the example of how they should behave. If you're using bad language, you're signaling to them that it's actually okay. And because they look up to you, they actually aspire to that behavior. So it's important to be clear on purpose and life vision. This is the architecture. This is a nice way that you can, on a single page, that you can kind of reflect on your own life, on your profession, on your direction and what it is that you aspire to. Okay, what about leadership and integrity and competence within leadership? So Zig Ziglar, a motivational speaker, author, and dynamic individual, said, "It is true that integrity alone won't make you a leader, but without it, you will never be one." Okay, so my response to this is that, okay, so we need to have integrity, and it by itself, it can't make us good leaders. So my response to that is we should possess certain competencies to become leaders, and more especially to become good leaders. So what is competence? It's the ability to do something successfully or effectively. So as a result, if we need competence, what if I don't have the competence or have limited competence in certain areas? Well, my response to that is we can learn and grow in our competence as leaders. So what might some of these competencies look like? Well, being clear on purpose, that is foundational to anything and everything that we do. The idea of having vision, we talked about what it is exactly that you want to do and what is the impact that you seek to have. So there lies a vision in that idea of what you want to do. If it's making sure people have access to education, making sure young people have healthy activities they can devote their energy to so that they're not distracted by unhealthy social ills like drugs and things like that. If that is your vision, then of course you need to be able to communicate and to be able to articulate this vision to others, to inspire them, for them to also support your vision through their own ideas, through their support and activities around this vision. And of course, there has to be a plan, a clear plan. Again, Daniel gave a wonderful example about a plan they had to create a band, and it came to fruition more or less exactly as they had planned and envisaged. If you put it down on paper, next year I want to enroll for a master's degree or a training program or whatever it is, and after that I want to do the second thing and the third thing, you find that you can better execute the ability to actually carry out the task. Of course, we ourselves need the competence of doing all these things, but it's also important to surround ourselves with people that have excellent abilities and competencies. And I often find that the people that I'm friends with, the people that I'm close with, the people I do business with, they have competencies which complement my own competencies, which means to say that if I did not have them to share ideas with me, to help me carry out tasks, I would not be able to carry them out as effectively or as efficiently. So as leaders, we need to have competencies, and we can learn and grow in these competencies. But of course, without integrity, it's foundational that it's impossible to be a leader, at least not to be a good leader. We would be an imitation, let's say. We've seen imitation products where it's not the genuine artifact. So we would be some sort of imitation of a leader. Some wisdom, some wise proverbs I thought to share with you around integrity. The first says, whoever walks in integrity, remember we said in a whole, undivided, honest, and authentic way, walks securely, but he who walks in crooked ways will be found out. The second says, integrity of the upright guides them, but the crooked and the treacherous will be destroyed, essentially, or it will destroy them. The crookedness of the treacherous will destroy them. So essentially, we see these proverbs inform us that things go well where there is integrity, and things do not go well where there is lack of integrity. So what are some examples we can look at? Again, Daniel gave some wonderful examples about characteristics you can see in good leadership and circumstances of that nature. So let's venture a little bit further into that. So where there's integrity, we see authenticity, true intent. We see a people-centeredness. In other words, our intentions are focused on what positive effect we can have on people. It creates trust. It creates good reputation. There's the presence of honesty. There's peace and lack of conflict and tension, unmanageable, unsustainable tension where there's integrity. There's fairness. There's judging and measuring between what's good for us, what's good overall in the first place, what's good for us, and what's good for others, and balancing between those three separate aspects and factors. There's harmony. There's consensus and community. Of course, where we say there's consensus, we mean that there's a meeting of minds, consensus ad idem. Where there's a meeting of minds, there's a commonality of purpose, and we can move forward together. And of course, there's growth. Growth in what way? Growth for us as private individuals, as we learn from each other, seeing the good attributes that each of us possess, different strengths we have, and the lessons we can learn. And we grow as a consequence of the fruit and the product of our combined honest work, which could be increased access to education, healthy activities, employment, etc. What about where there is lack of integrity? We see abuse, people taking advantage of power, positions. We see greed. Instead of using resources to build a company, to build a community, to build a school, we see people taking this and consuming it for their own greed and personal ambitions. We see a self-serving agenda. It results in mistrust, I beg your pardon, deceitfulness, chaos. There's lack of order, there's lack of peace. We see manipulation of other people. We see fraud. We see this injustice, and we see scarcity. Rather than growth, there's an overconsumption of resources and a waste of resources that are there. So we can logically and obviously see that it's better to act with integrity. We've seen all the scandals, company executives stealing money, the company goes bust, people lose their jobs, and it also creates mistrust of the public towards corporate entities. For example, the global financial crisis in 2007, 2008, a lot of mistrusts of banks because of the abuse that resulted from their greed. Now, let's try to look at our current context and environment. We're in an environment where we're experiencing a major shift from science fiction to science fact. This has become a reality with the COVID-19 pandemic all around the world and the transition in terms of technology. We've seen how quickly now, instead of meeting in a hall somewhere where some of us would have flown from Rwanda, from Uganda, from Kenya for this meeting, booked into hotels and so forth, we are meeting on a Zoom platform. A lot of team meetings, conferences are being held in this technological manner. And that is just one example. What makes it even more interesting is that some of you may have heard this term, a VUCA world. VUCA in my native language means to wake up. But in this context, VUCA is an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Why volatility? Because there's just so much change happening. The speed of change is so rapid, and the frequency of change is also very high. We have a lot of uncertainty. We cannot as reliably predict what is going to happen. It's not a clear cause and effect. You know, if you push this glass off the table, it will fall and it will break. Now, things are not that obvious to us. So we have things coming from left field, as they say. So it's becoming quite difficult to read. And of course, technology, you buy a new phone today or a new computer, and by next week, there's a new version that's already available with new features. So what are some of the implications about this? So a question is, the technology is evolving so quickly, but are we ourselves growing as quickly? So technology is a means to how we do things, isn't it? But what about the human consciousness level, the why? You know, we talked about purpose, the why for our existence. You know, are we so consumed about this technological growth that we're losing sight of the true purpose, intent behind why we even exist and what we're doing? That's important. So we need to reflect about organizational culture or community culture. Is it constructive? Is it also being overtaken by technology? People are now working from home. So again, culture issues, discipline issues. How are you working when you're working from home? Your supervisor is not standing over your shoulder. They're not running behind you with a whip. So are you honoring, are you behaving with integrity to work, to have a good work ethic? Are you being ethical in your work practices? And also a point of reflection is, are we shaping the future, or are we constantly reacting to the future as it comes at us? Some bigger questions that some of us might not be concerned with at this stage is artificial intelligence. Now we have machines that if you want to invest your money, the machine has algorithm, it can decide where to best place your money, and machines are being given agency. So what are some of the ethics behind that? Because it will extend from investing your money to judging a court case. So rather than having a judge, you have a computer, And what about the ethics behind that? So we spoke about the balancing of interests. We consider three things when we look at ethics, when we look at integrity. We look at what is right, what is good, and then we look at ourselves and our interest in the situation, and then we look at others and their interest. Are we balancing between these three fundamental components of what makes for integrity, for fairness, and good outcomes? Are we also training people? This is an ethical response. If you're an employer or a manager or a team leader, are you training people to remain relevant, or are you just allowing them to be overtaken by technology and to become irrelevant? If someone's job in 3 years, and you know it's going to be the case that we'll actually have more technology and we'll need only 3 people than 10 people in that department, are you training them to be able to do other roles in your company, or at least to train them to have better chance of success when you eventually retrench them or make them redundant from your business? And as groups, as communities, you know, we're Mimi Nani, for example, a community of people that are leading and aspiring to lead. Are we being resilient? Are we responding to the environment in a way that we can sustain these initiatives and realize, take opportunity to unleash the stars of Africa? Are we managing the need for human contact? So obviously technology allows us to have contact versus no contact. For example, if we're under lockdown, some environments have seen more of lockdown than others. For example, in Kenya, also Zimbabwe, South Africa, and we have this opportunity to connect. But beyond this connection, do we also still have opportunity for people to have that human contact? It is a question of ethics and integrity for people to have that wholesomeness allowed within the environment. So I thought to just sneak this in there, a little talk around technology and a consideration around ethics, because with technology, we're usually so fascinated because oh goodness, look what it does. You can react, you can applaud, you can raise your hand, you can chat, you can do all these things, you can go away into different rooms. We're so enthralled by the technology that we don't ask questions around some of the integrity. So for example, if I switch the device off, is the device still watching me as I relax to watch soccer on a Saturday, or as I interact with my family? You know, this is the sort of integrity and ethics we want to ask. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to ask questions. There is power in questions. How can I become a better leader? Who are some of the people I can look at to be a good leader? Asking questions. So technology is an area we can ask questions. So some quotations and words of integrity I want to leave with you. The one is from Chinua Achebe. I think many of you know he wrote wonderful books like Son of the Soil was a wonderful book that I thoroughly enjoyed reading. And he said, one of the truest tests of integrity is its blunt refusal to be compromised. So somebody is asking you to help them to steal $1 million from the bank. You could, of course, compromise and do that, but your refusal is because you're standing on integrity. And if you're a leader of a group and you're given the money to go and pay salaries to these workers, let's say people, your team has been digging for cable networks, for internet pipe cables to be put, and then you're supposed to go and pay them. You could, of course, take that money together with your other supervisor, or you could refuse to do that and do the honorable thing to give them their pay. So the refusal to be compromised, this is what we're talking about with integrity, sticking to what is best and what is right. And here we're not talking about, there is wisdom in compromise sometimes. If you have a difference of opinion with a colleague and you want to land at a solution that works best, taking account of the different inputs that have been given, that's something completely different. And then
Charles,
we have,
sorry,
hello.
Please allow me to cut you short. Would you mind to wrap it up in like 1 minute because you're behind time?
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. This is actually the second but last slide. So our last slide now, if it agrees to, okay. Right, so this is our last slide. I just want to leave questions with you. How can you show greater integrity in your personal life and leadership? I want you to reflect on this. How can you influence your surroundings for a more ethical culture in leadership? And what are some of the challenges you might face in your endeavor to do this? And how can you overcome these anticipated challenges? Thank you so much for this opportunity. And that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Charles. That was a very insightful presentation that calls for deep reflections. And I hope our participants have been taking notes, and there's just a lot to process. And I think it poses some important questions in different areas of our of our exposure and maybe of work or endeavors. And I think the question you posed to me personally is on how integrity can start with myself just before other people. And so as you're talking about technology, I was just thinking about the compromises that I do make with myself and my own plans as far as technology is concerned. Sometimes just get lost in these devices and everything and wanting to catch up or following up, and you forget about the things that you've said for yourself and things like that. So I was just thinking about that, and cuts across the discipline and things like that. So the message to me is that we are accountable to ourselves first before we are accountable to others as far as integrity is concerned. So thank you so much for that was a great connection to Daniel's presentation. You took us deeper to how the relevance of thinking about, it's that structure was great in terms of integrity doesn't just appear like, oh, I have integrity. There are values, there's a foundation, there are pillars, and the purpose, vision, all those things. So I hope our participants can start reflecting on this and really build on and start probably develop, if you don't have, like, what are your core values, what are your foundations, what are your pillars, what is your purpose, what is your vision. And that's all that really can help you have or be a person of strong integrity. So thank you so much for bringing that big picture to us, and I hope it will be very useful when we are developing ourselves and in decision making as well. Remembering those things. So a round of applause, please, to Charles. Just let's, virtually still, but I hope we've benefited. And to both of them, Daniel and Charles, I hope they have exposed us to some extent into leadership, looking at it as a, in that big picture. So now, without further ado, I'd like for us to move to our Q&A session where we are going to have more questions, and I would like to hear from you. Please feel free to use the chat. Let's engage. You can share your key points. What have you learned? What are your lessons? What are the questions you have? And if you want to speak up, I will give you the permission to just come on board and ask a question, put your video on, or if you just want to speak, let's hear you. You can ask your question live and just make it short so that we can have the most of our panelists, but also give a chance to others as well to ask as many questions as there is. So now I have our three panelists that are going to be taking us through this session. And we have one new panelist that was not presenting. His name is Chris Gombe. Chris, I hope you're ready and set. So I'll just have you just a little bit, letting our participants get to know you. He's one of a great person. he's one of my mentors as well, but also he plays a big role in Miminan organization, but also he's done a lot of great things as well. So it's a great pleasure having you, Chris, joining us again this afternoon. So please just, if you can just let participants know a bit about you, and then we will get into the questions about leadership. And please, feel free to join and ask. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Felicia, and good day to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Chris Kumbe, as Felicia has said, and I didn't have the opportunity, my apologies, to share my profile beforehand for circumstances beyond my control. However, in brief, I am someone who dreams of an Africa where anyone who dares to dream of something, they've got the support structures to help them or to support them in making those dreams come true. So part of why we are here as Nani is actually to fulfill that vision for me personally, where we provide youth with support structures in terms of achieving their dreams. And my purpose in life, I believe, is to make things happen. And I do that by using my skills that I have, leaning on my passion, and also using my network to support others in terms of what it is that they want to do. And as has been shared by the two previous presenters, I also believe in living a life that is values driven, that is values led. And my main values, I believe that anything that I do, I must do it with passion. I don't believe people should do anything without passion, because the moment you lose passion, you lose the fuel to move forward. And another value that I strive to live by is that I want to be of service. I believe that we're put on this earth to be useful, to be helpful. So whatever we do, we must be of service to ourselves, to society, and to the world at large. And I also try to live a life that is balanced, that is, navigating the question of how do you have the best of both worlds. Balance for me means fairness, means choosing right between wrong. It's about living a life where you understand that you always have challenges. You don't necessarily have to swing to one side, but I try to find a balance between two extreme positions. And lastly, I try to hold myself to the utmost standards of integrity. So I try to live a life that is where I hold myself to very high standards of ethics. That's integrity, has been discussed by Charles. So in short, that's me, and glad to be here. Thank you, Felicia, and Tim for having me on board.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, one thing I know you for is how you identify yourself with values, and I think that's a great way or example of how we can live or lead our lives best. So thank you so much. So now I will ask Danny and Charles to join Chris among the panelists for this session, and I'm just going to be asking you a few questions that were collected. And some of the questions, I encourage the participants to just bring them on in the area of leadership. It doesn't have to be limited to just what we spoke about today, but what are the leadership challenges that you're having today? And it would be great to to see how best they can be addressed. So now let me start with the first question. And so my first question is about responsibility as part of leadership. So to many youths, leadership is responsibility that is given. When I say leadership that is responsibility that is given, I mean that, a lot of young people will wait to be assigned a responsibility. if it's not assigned to them, then they will not take action. They will not step up and lead. So how do we help young people or youths to be more self-driven, to be more self-made, or rather to assign responsibilities to themselves, not just to wait? I hope that makes sense. Is that clear? All right. So who would like to go for that? And so we can just hear quickly your perspectives, and then Chris, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Felicia. For me, I think leadership is a journey, and as has been said by Charles um, and uh, and Daniel, we have frameworks that we can use in terms of developing leadership. Actually, Charles quotes himself and says, leadership capabilities can be learned. So I believe that we can help the youth in terms of becoming better leaders who are self-motivated by mentoring them, becoming better leaders. And part of that mentorship involves applying the frameworks that have been shared here, where we work with them in terms of helping them identify what is their purpose in life and purpose driven, and then generally giving them a space where they are given responsibility to find out for themselves who they are, and then they start igniting that passion, or that will end up driving the self, that ends up being the fuel that they need in order to do things without being prompted to do. I think when someone has a vision and a purpose, then there's no need for them to be told what to do. They will have that self-drive. And I think that's what lacks. So in short, I believe that we can do something by mentoring them in terms of showing them the way in as far as coming up with vision, purpose is concerned.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anyone, Danny or Charles, who would want to add on that?
Thank you, Felicia. I would add that the biggest thing that brings impact to our lives is the people who believe in us more than the people that we believe in. For example, we as leaders, if we believe in young people, we build their confidence. So we need to believe in them. And then secondly, we need to provide opportunities. Even if they don't take up leadership, we need to always provide opportunities for them to see. And then the last thing is modeling the kind of leaders that we want them to be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Charles?
Perhaps I can add to that, Felicia. Yes. So to add to what Chris and Daniel have said, I think what's important for young people to realize is, okay, often we have this portrayal of leadership as being selfless, which it is, because we act in the interest of others. But also when we lead, our interests are also tied to what we are doing. So young people graduate from school, from university, and they want to get a good career, to be able to have enough money to move out of their parents' home, to be able to find a life partner and to afford to get married, to be able to grow a family and afford to have children. So what I'm saying is the interests that they serve as a leader are directly tied to the interests and the ambitions that they have in life. So as they growing as a leader also serves their own personal interests. So they shouldn't look to achieve their interests absent of leadership. The two are inseparable. So I think that's one thing they should consider. And also, often people will have this ambition, oh, I want to be a team leader, I want to be a manager, and then I can drive the nice car, I can do this, I can do that. But actually, the leadership comes before the title. People think, okay, I'm going to behave like a manager when they make me a manager. But they should remember that they need to first exhibit the leadership to take the initiative in order to get the position. So yeah, I think those are 2 points I would want to encourage to young people to take initiative.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Now we have a question here from our participant. I think his name is Ali. So his question is: leadership affected by transition. The time you start to develop your strategies, when you get transferred to another area. So how will you be consistent and measure your success? So I think this is when when you have certain responsibility or position somewhere, then you have to move where you're already sort of established. So I think some of you, or maybe all of you, talked about strategy. Yeah. So how would you, address this? Anyone who would like to take this?
Okay, I'll try, and I hope that I've understood the question. And it has to do with changing responsibilities. For me, I would answer it this way and say, we spoke about vision. Vision is something that is attained over a fairly long period. And while your circumstances may change, you may change roles, you may change responsibilities, your vision hardly changes. So I think there is room for you to still develop your leadership capacity is influenced by your vision and your purpose while your roles may change. So for example, let's say you could look yourself in the context of a family person, where your responsibilities have to do with the family, and you can also look at yourself in the context of work. I think while those may be different circumstances, but I think the vision that you have set for yourself in life, as well as the purpose for which you're living, they don't change. So I think there's room for you to grow your leadership potential. In fact, I believe it's actually good for decisions to happen because the more capacity you develop. I hope I understood the question, and maybe the person can tell us if we have answered it or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think that is well done. I don't know if there is anyone who wants to add to that.
Yeah, yeah, it was a multifaceted question, and part of it is asking how would you then measure that success, your success as a leader. So whenever you embark on a journey, there are milestones which should inform you how far along the journey you are and whether you have arrived at where you want to get. So if we're traveling, so from my hometown to the city of Harare, it's 432 kilometers. So at each point along the journey, first of all, I must have enough fuel in the tank to arrive there. And of course, if I'm 150 kilometers along the route, which I know is the means of getting there, so I have the resources of getting there, and then I identify the route of getting to the destination, I can then measure along that route, the different pegs, 200 kilometers, 300, 400, 430, how far along I've reached. I should arrive halfway by midday and so on and so forth. So I think it's important to have milestones. So if it's your career, maybe you want to earn a certain level of income by a certain point, or if you're doing sales, obviously there's a target that you must achieve. So that's the level of clarity you must have in your planning so that you can compare the reality to the plan. I think that's really all I've got to add in addition to what Chris had said.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Now, please allow me to move to the next question, and I will like to encourage our participants to just add more questions. So let's talk about attitude, leadership attitude, and this attitude is on resilience. So you know, in the world of today, like resilience is a strong leadership character that is much needed over the longest time, and especially now. I think, Charles, on that that Seiko, you spoke about that, you know, now with the COVID era, a lot of uncertainties and so many things. I think as young people have been some of the people that I would say who have been highly affected, because some of them are either unemployed or they're in school or they were, you know, looking for jobs and things like that. And all of a sudden, everything suddenly stopped. So just want to get your overview. What do you think about the youth of today, and with regards to resilience? You know, are they resilient enough, or, you know, are they not? Or and what, you know, how, why do you say that, or why do you think that? And, you know, how can we help them to probably develop more resilience as far as leadership
I think
is
that's an
concerned?
excellent. Thank you. That's an excellent question. If I could have a first attempt at responding and answering that question. So I think it's really important to have resilience, which you've referred to, and especially in this time when there are so many challenges within the environment which we face and so many needs. So I think with the youth, what we can observe is youth are highly mobile, and how this plays out often in environments is they can quickly and easily move on from one thing to another. So for example, they're offered a job somewhere, 6 months later, they hear there's a better one there, they're paying 10% more salary, and the person moves. But actually, I would not encourage this. Of course, each situation has its own circumstance. But for example, Robert Greene in his book Mastery, which is Mastery, 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 he said that on average it takes 7 years. For example, if you look at any respectable apprentice program, it's a 7-year apprentice. Even for a doctor, it takes 7, 8 years. So anything from 7 to 10 years to master a topic is what it takes. So often you have to be in an environment where you can get the right mentorship, the right tuition. And usually if you're in a good workplace or a good environment, you have that longevity. So one of the attitudes or characteristics we see is young people just moving from here to there because they're chasing a title, they're chasing an income, and incomes are important. I do concede to that. But then in the process, they're failing to achieve the level of development which they need in order to build that resilience. So it becomes a habit, the habit of moving on. I've got a bad boss, so I'm moving jobs. I don't like a certain component, maybe the salary is not good, but rationally speaking, if I grow in my job, I should expect my salary to grow versus me just hopping to another place. So I think this is a feature with young people that is linked to resilience. It can affect resilience if people develop a habit of just hopping from one situation to another. And of course, I'm commenting generally, but I think that's worth bearing in mind, that you need to develop mastery, which will be good for you in the long term. So you forego short-term satisfaction for a long-term better outcome. Deferred gratification is what it's called, and that's important for young people. So I'll end by saying young people need to develop the ability or the willingness to defer their gratification for longer-term better outcomes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charles. Chris or Danny, would you like to add on that?
I think that's well said. It links up with the 10,000 hour rule, that if you want to become a master of something, you have to practice it for 10,000 hours. And if you were to break down into normal hours, that would take you up to 4 years to become a master in either an instrument or something. I would just like to note also, youthful stage of youthful life is transitional. It's not a permanent stage. So the clearer you are about your goals and vision, the more that gives you resilience to work in an either in an environment And then also, just like in military or in any strength training program, the more the resistance, the stronger you become. So I think one of the things is young people should take up even challenges and problems as an opportunity for growth. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. So Chris, I would like to ask you a different question. I know you're recruiting, working with people, and I know among them are young people, probably just individuals in different age, I would say, age limit. But if you'd like to share from just a workplace setting, what are some of the I would say habits, or rather examples, of people who showcase some of the leadership, I would say, gaps from their day-to-day, I would say, habits or experiences at workplace. So how would you identify, like, this is a leadership gap, or this habit it shows or it exemplify a leadership challenge? Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Alicia. So from the workplace environment, I would look at it this way. The young people that are joining, especially our organization, we look at them in terms of how do they self-manage, how do they lead themselves, so self-leadership. And it starts with simple things like, are they able to meet the requirements of, let's say, coming to work on time? When they come to work, how do they present themselves? Are they professional, or they are very casual about it? Because again, leadership is about influencing others. So we also look at them in terms of how do they interact with others. Are they people that are defined, they're very clear about who they are, or they walk into an office environment and start conforming to maybe some of undesirable elements? Let's say they end up following what all the staff members would do. For example, they take extended lunch hours. We are looking at the youth in that way and say, are they any different? Definitely for us, the expectation is that they need to be different. So definitely the one area that I would say we look at is how do they lead themselves, because we don't expect to handhold them. We want them to show self initiative. They don't need to be told things. Sometimes when they come into the office, maybe people are not there to train them. Do they sit and do nothing, or you find them there on social media? So it's about self-managing yourself, and we see that exhibiting a lot that they lack that ability to manage self, to be self-motivated, and to show initiative.
Okay, thank you. Charles, would you like to add on that? I see you've raised the hand.
Yes, yeah, so I think Chris has made some excellent points on that issue. What I would like to add to that is we often, I've observed that young people are increasingly aware of their rights, but less aware of their responsibilities. So rights and responsibilities go hand in hand. People want better salaries, more comfortable work environments, or whatever it is they feel that they have a right to have, less working hours or whatever it is. But they're less enthusiastic about the responsibility that comes with that. So I think as an encouragement, it's important to be aware of our rights and to make a stand where it matters. But we should first be keenly aware of the responsibilities that we bear, because often the benefits we derive are in exchange for a value that we bring. So young people, you spoke about resilience, and young people are very good with technology, broadly speaking. But as Chris spoke around, what are the sort of attitudes behind that. You know, there's no point being excellent with technology, but you're not motivated within the workplace or to apply that technology in innovating and serving the interest of the employer. Also, what Chris mentioned to me brought to mind the fact that whether you're young or you're middle-aged or you're old, the most difficult person to lead is yourself. And Chris spoke about self-leadership. I think that's a fundamental point. So self-leadership is probably, yeah, the most difficult person to lead is yourself. And if you can lead yourself successfully, you have far greater opportunity of succeeding in leading others successfully as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Those are very great explanations. And now let me just get back to our platform here on the chat. There are a few questions. So one, Nendu Voto asked about how do you as a leader manage yourself? Everything and everyone is looking at you as maybe a manager and a parent or spouse. How do you remain sane even when things are falling out of hand? So I think this is all about, I think it's around management, like self-management, but also balance. So if you can just hear from either of you, whoever wants to go first.
I nominate Daniel.
Daniel, please. Did you get the question?
Can you,
yes.
please mention it again?
So the question is, how do you as a leader manage yourself in the midst of everything and everyone looking up to you? So it could be, you know, your boss or your parent or a spouse. How do you remain sane even when things are falling out of hand?
Okay. I have maybe 2 or 3 ideas that personally I've used because I lead a team of 20 in the organization that I work or I serve in. Number one is that yeah, as a leader, you need a shoulder or some mentors or some coach who are away probably from your workplace so that you can share some challenges or problems that you face. Because one of the things that if you're a leader, for example, and you share your problems with your colleagues or the team that you lead, sometimes it's not taken well. It could be a sign, it could be taken like a sign of weakness or all that. And yet you need to be authentic in some matters and aspects. So I would say the balance is for your own personal growth and development, you need probably a coach or a mentor by the side to help you deal with the difficulty. Number 2 is how I've experienced it. Not all days are the same. And sometimes when you stand your ground on your values and all that, you'll face opposition. People don't view things the way you view. And the best thing is to sometimes take a day at a time. When there's a big challenge and you're not able to resolve it, you don't have to, I would say you don't have to destroy yourself because of that, but sometimes you can let it off as you figure out how to resolve that. The third thing is put yourself in a space where you interact with other leaders that can challenge you and learn how to manage things. And personally, when I'm not able to get that, I learn a lot from books. I read a lot about leadership and how things have been done, how other leaders have done things. And personally, that's what has worked for me. And maybe my faith in God also works well, because when it's beyond me, I go to God and ask him, kindly help me. That's it for those who believe in faith. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. That was also well articulated. I don't know if there is any addition from Chris or Charles before we go to the next question.
Just one addition, Felicia. I would say that, again, borrowing from what Charles spoke of in terms of that lead, learn, and you need to develop that capacity. I think a leader, we ask, you need to have a high level of emotional intelligence. you need to work on it consciously in terms of managing your own emotions, as well as able to read the emotions of those that you're leading. Because I think as leaders, that's where we perhaps fail. When we're under pressure, we succumb. You behave emotionally when, it would be helpful to be rational. So I guess, in addition to what Daniel has said, is I would say work on enhancing your emotional intelligence.
Thank you. There's another question here from Ali Mami Bangura. So I'm not sure how to properly phrase this, but his question is, how can one maintain to, okay, I don't know if you're around, probably you can just ask it out, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about how can one maintain leadership skills to see a successful achievement. So probably, I don't know, is it about acquiring and maintaining leadership skills that can help you to have achievements, or I don't know if that makes sense. Perhaps if Alimami Bankura, you're around, or maybe you can just ask directly, or if our panelists, if you get the question, maybe you can help us respond to that. I am not sure if I am asking it correctly.
Yeah, so I think just to support your point, if Ali is able to unmute and communicate, that would be great. But in the meantime, maybe we can look at some of the operative words. He speaks about articulation, he speaks about good leadership.
Sorry, Charles. I think Ali, are you ready? I think I heard you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah,
Go
can
ahead.
you hear
Yes,
me? Yeah, it's just like what you're trying to phrase. So how can one in a leadership perspective, how can one try to maintain his leadership skills in order to see what he can achieve in that, like leading people?
Do you have like a specific example, or?
Hello?
Yes. Do you have like a specific example or a challenge around that
Like
that
what
you'd like to use to elaborate?
what exactly the leadership skills that you can use in order for you to achieve a successful leadership?
Okay. I think it's around developing capabilities or like the skills for, for leadership. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So probably I think that's now it's much clearer. If Charles, you are
All right. Yeah.
already
So
on
thanks,
it.
Ali Mami. Thanks for your question. A very good question. I think it's important. I think both Daniel and Chris touched on this at some point. The idea about mentorship, that one needs advice and mentorship to be able to and of course you're facing new and evolving situations, so that your skill sets have to be able to adapt. You need a good sounding board about situations and your judgment, someone who can sort of question or challenge some of your thinking or make suggestions. So I think that's one way in which to sustain skills. But what might some of these skills look like? So in terms of, there's a distinction between management and leadership. Management competence is more about, leadership is more concerned about the strategic direction. So the outlook of a vision and what you want to achieve and how you're going to get there. And management is about the actual process of getting there, allocating resources, deciding who should do what. So the ability to delegate tasks, the ability to communicate clearly what these tasks are become quite important. And of course, we talked a little bit about the ability to plan effectively. So if you're going on a road trip, you know that I need to choose a day when I'm going. I need to have a means by which I'm going to get there. I need to have the resources. Maybe you need snacks for the journey. You need petrol for the car. You need a car in the first place. Maybe you have other people you're going to go with. Do they fit into the plan? So the ability to be able to plan, and of course, when the time comes, the commitment to see it through. You know, are you prepared to wake up at 4 in the morning to take that journey? That in itself is a sacrifice. Are you prepared to take on the opportunity cost of not being able to watch the game with your friends because you're going on this important journey, etc. So I think in terms of what the specific skills might look like, we could consider plan, maintaining control of a situation, being able to delegate, being able to adequately allocate resources. Time is an important resource. Finances are an important resource. So I think, yeah, in response to what some of the skills might be and how you can sustain them, I would say it's important to have a coach or a mentor or people you respect that you can reflect off. And then, of course, to develop these competencies of being able to plan, being able to delegate and maintain control, and in the ordering of events and activities.
Thank you so much, Charles. Okay. We're out of time. So I'm wondering if there's one question that just popped up, and I wonder if we can just be very brief to addressing it. So what is it? I think the question, I'm trying to rephrase it. What is it that one is to look at, I think, while you choose a mentor for your leadership achievement? I think you've all been talking about how you should have a mentor, how you should seek mentorship and things like that. So maybe a bit of a guidance there. And I know a lot of young people importance, but they probably lack the right guide to doing that or approach that or have one. So how would you address that question? Just briefly.
Let me go first. I have a mentor, not one, I think 2 or 3. And one is to choose exactly what you want. You want a mentor in terms of leadership, then you have to identify a mentor who is a leader in that area. One thing I've realized is that many people are willing to help. Many people think that if I approach a certain person, they will not be able to help me, but people are willing. The only thing that you need is to value their time, approach them confidently, share what you want to do. The other thing, if you're not able to access physical mentors, if you would identify good books, probably books, if it's on leadership or management, get some books that provide some insights and practice them. That provides a safe, I would say a safe and a cheap environment or setting that you would learn these skills. So those are the 2 that I've applied personally, and they work. I have a whole stockpile of leadership books. I read, reflect, and practice what I've learned. And there's a concept of adapting, and it works well. For those who are not bookworms like I am, probably Charles, I don't know, you would give your own suggestions on that. I'm a bookworm, so I value reading. Yeah.
Yes, that's excellent, actually. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Often if you ask people, if you were given the opportunity to meet Mandela, would you take the time to meet with him? Of course, they say yes. But if you ask, have you read his autobiography? Have you read any books about him or by him? Then you might find the answer is no. So reading is a wonderful way to get lessons from the lives of others. And I enjoy autobiographies as a result. So with a mentor, I would encourage finding someone who not only has the skills and experience to mentor you, but who actually believes in you. From personal experience, I find if it's the wrong person, actually, you might find them discouraging because maybe they speak in a way that's not affirmative to your skill sets. Maybe they're always questioning, what you're doing in a negative way versus reinforcing you, but challenging you around the means by which you want to achieve a certain outcome. It's quite distinctly different. So I would say find someone, obviously for them to devote time to you, the assumption is they believe in you, but just be clear that the person actually does believe in your potential, and is not doing it because maybe they have a KPI where they need to take off that they're mentoring somebody. Yeah.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to add on that, or I ask you a final question?
Yeah, just one thing. I would say you need to be clear about what it is that you want from that mentor, so that they can add value. A mentor is there to guide you, not to tell you things. So be very clear about what it is that you want. Otherwise, we're all said by my colleagues.
Okay, and now like wrapping up, Chris, would you like to say like what would be your last takeaway for young people in terms of what are the good, I don't know, the strength, the skills, or the good things that they can start, living or showcasing as part of leadership development?
Okay, thank you for that, Felicia. Personally, I interact a lot with young people that come to the organization looking for work. And I must say, a good number of them are doing amazing things. So one of the things that I've seen they do is that they are volunteering. Volunteering helps you develop skills that you would not ordinarily get. If you're not employed, it doesn't mean that you cannot gain skills. So volunteering is one aspect. Number two, I've seen youth learn new skills. You'll see someone who studied a certain degree, but during the time that maybe they are not doing anything, they go out of their way to learn a completely new skill. So that's something that I would encourage. I've seen youth engaging each other in terms of collaborating. Today's digital world allows people to connect easily than before. So I would encourage youth to use platforms wherever there is an opportunity for them to interact with people that are outside their normal influence, because that helps you grow. So for me, quickly, that's what I would say are some of the positive things that I've seen youth exhibit.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I think that's a very good point out there, and just connects to our next session that we are going to be having soon after a short break. We are going to be looking at entrepreneurship, and it's so relevant today because, in as much as young people leave out of universities, college, or school, they get into the market only to find that there are fewer quality jobs out there, if available at all, and the competition is so high. So getting jobs is becoming more difficult, and the only alternative it's entrepreneurship. So you're having a lot of young people starting out ventures or initiatives just to either having more presence in the market or to make a living. So we want to do it right. If we're doing entrepreneurship, we want to do it right, because it's now becoming a part of a career. We are embracing it more. It's not just something for survival, but more of a real thing that we can basically grow and create opportunities for other people. We need more jobs. So please do not leave. Stay with us for a short break so that we can get into that. So now I'm just going to close this part of the session. Please, let's give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists that have been here addressing the questions and giving us great insights. Please just make time to connect with them, ask them questions if you have any, and it will be nice. I'm sure they'll be more than glad to hear from you. And if I skipped any of your questions, I know some of you might have, maybe shared your questions and I've not read them out in this session. It's just because of shortage of time. So apology on that. We'll find a way to have them addressed. So otherwise, we're going into a short break. Please do not log off. Stay on board. Just go stretch yourself, have a cup of coffee or tea, and just come back, and we're going to get into another session on entrepreneurship. So thank you so much, Charles, Chris, Danny, for your precious time. And yeah, so thank you, everyone. Thank you for sitting in and listening. Yeah, so let's meet soon in 15 minutes. we'll just have a video playing just to have you relaxed and have a short break, but we'll be around in case you have any need or any question. You can just use the chat and our team will be available for you. So thank you so much. It was a great time with you. So let me just need to share something here.